the next guest is our Honorable VP Schinas. He is Vice President for the European Commission on promoting the European way of life. What does that mean? It means, amongst others, being in charge of the security union, tackling cybercrime, terrorism, and protecting critical infrastructure and addressing hybrid threats. It is not an easy task in times of war, and I want to thank you up front for basically taking this leadership and for making this a key priority of Europe. Please welcome on stage VP Schinas. Thank you so much for joining us. Please.
Yeah.
Yes. So you got a bit of a, I would say, challenging environment in general after the war in Ukraine, and I think it was not a coincidence that you were chosen for this role. You have a long career in actually addressing these kind of threats. So if you look now with the war on the doorstep and Ukraine and everything happening, has that changed the dynamics in Europe? Have you seen, Europe stepping up and the member states leaning in a different way? What has been the major kind of change?
First of all, thank you for having me. Welcome. I'm delighted to be here. When President von der Leyen called me in August 2019 to interview me and then subsequently to give me my job, and she explained that for her, she wanted this vice presidency to be a mix of what Emmanuel Macron called in his famous Sorbonne speech, a Europe that protects, with another set of policies, which is a Europe that empowers. And she said, the Europe that protects part, it's going to be more challenging. Mm-hmm. And that was 3 years before the war started. I don't know if she knew, but she clearly sensed, also coming from a perspective of Minister for Defense, that very often our work at the EU level, when it comes to security, has not always been, how should I put this diplomatically, has not always been coherent. Mm-hmm. It has very often been projected as fragmented, an aggregation of silo mentalities, people coming from different perspectives, very often competing systems in terms of money, priorities, resources. So we decided in this commission to build a single roof house, which we will call the EU Security Union. And the idea would be to bring under this same single roof the different components of security, to build the individual chambers, if you like, but in a way that all these chambers would be connected, fertilized by the same spirit of cooperation, pooling resources, expertise. And I think everything that happened since vindicated this choice. Not only the war in Ukraine, but also this quest for resilience, the pandemic, the need to beef up our defenses as a society. I think this security union, which started as an idea, as a project, as a plan, is now becoming a tangible reality. And if there is a moment where this became very evident, was of course the war. Because there, especially on cyber, but not only on cyber, but especially on cyber, we were able to help the Ukrainians together with our friends and allies, with like-minded people, with many experts from the private sector. And I think I've said that on another occasion, that when the war is over, there will be many pilgrimages in Kiev to see how this worked so nicely.
Yeah. So you see now, but basically, it was when the commission started, it was an idea, and somehow there was a readiness to move, and there was a momentum to do that. Do you see it as the first step? Do you think that, I mean, is the vision of having a total common cyber defense? We are now seeing this cyber defense policy coming out. I mean, how will How do you see that? What will it look like in 5 to 10 years?
Well, the first decisive step for the birth of what we now can call an EU approach to cyber defense was Ukraine. Why? Because with the very creative spirit of our Ukrainian friends and the very substantial support of like-minded partners and NATO, we made a difference. Now, let us also be very clear and frank. It's also true that the level of threat was not that intense as we were expecting it to be. I don't think that this is because of us, that the sort of defense we built deterred a wave of aggression, but clearly the level of cyber threat from Russia was not the extent of we were planning for. Now, of course, now we're drawing the lessons of this experience, and we have already announced that we would like to create a cyber solidarity platform, if you like, that would allow us in these difficult moments where we have to face very specific threats, geopolitical or others, to be able to draw on the expertise of trusted partners, rangers, if you like, agents of good, that could be mobilized under a system and an organizational aspect of like-minded partners to be able to deter. Detect, deter, and respond. This is something that we are preparing. We have already announced it, we're preparing it, and I'm sure that we can count with the involvement of the private sector to make it a reality. We will need the private sector for that.
And will that, so do you see that collaboration being, first of all, it's of course EU, but will it be EU plus? Will there also be, countries like Moldova, Ukraine, and other non-EU partners that will be a part of that?
This will certainly be EU-led. It will be an EU initiative. We are putting it together at our level with our friends and in the European External Action Service and my colleague, High Representative Josep Borrell. But clearly, we imagine this as a system that could very well cover our partners beyond the EU, where we will need to develop this capacity. And again, Ukraine has taught us many, many good lessons on how to do this. We did it on an ad hoc basis in Ukraine. Now we need a more systemic approach to it. We need to be able to set up a system that where we need it, we push the button, we activate this framework of solidarity, and we deploy it where we need it.
So one of the things I think we are hearing that the rest of the world is looking at Europe thinking, wow, I mean, they were moving ahead of the curve was the NIS directive. I mean, do you think that this has made, we know that around the cyber attacks on critical infrastructure has raised around 40%, but still, I mean, we've been relatively robust. And as you said, the attacks have not been as forceful as we had expected. Do you think that the implementation of NIS 1 and now NIS 2 that has actually created already results in this situation?
Well, I sneaked a bit in the previous panel, and I heard someone saying that we don't need regulation in Europe, but don't do that to us, otherwise we'll go elsewhere. I beg to differ. We do need some regulation in Europe, especially because Europeans in certain key areas like cybersecurity demand a certain level of protection. And we, as politicians, regulators, if you like, we have under the obligation to address these concerns. Cybersecurity is no longer an issue for the industry. I'm well aware that I'm speaking in an audience of industry representatives, but cybersecurity has now become a major issue for society. It's an issue of national security. So when we build this regulatory environment in Europe, not only NIS 2, where we have added new sectors and we have fine-tuned the level of protection and coordination between member states, but also with a twin proposal on the protection of our critical infrastructure. We're doing it because in Europe we need to have a system in place that would prevent the type of situations that we have seen in the United States. Take, for example, the pipeline incident, where a digital threat, a ransomware attack, was linked to a critical infrastructure. So we are building this regulatory framework in Europe precisely to anticipate this type of events. And we're not doing it because people in the morning wake up in Brussels and look around to see what is to be regulated. We're doing it because there is a genuine concern for society. Same thing now, we're moving into this new area we have discussed together, Cecilia, which is the products, the area of products, with the Cyber Resilience Act. In our lives will be totally interconnected with products, with the Internet of Things, with appliances. We have a duty to ensure that the level of security attached to this new ecosystem would assure the concerns of the people. And we're not doing it all for the people, it's good also for the industry, because if people have the certainty that these products, appliances, are safe, then they will buy them. So a level of regulatory certainty, I think, would be necessary in Europe. And it's a good thing. I don't think that this should be seen as something that is a burden. It's seeing it in the bigger picture, I think it's a win-win.
So maybe turning to one of the things that we discussed last time I met with you, we discussed the situation that we are lacking a lot of competences in the digital, not only in cyber, but in the digital space. Will there be also some major initiatives coming from the Commission on building, skills and resilience through building, cybersecurity competences in other areas? Is there anything? There's the cyber academies, and maybe you want to elaborate a bit on that. How do you see the role of the EU and the role of the private sector in bringing up the level of skills that we have?
In the broader area of my portfolio responsibilities, I also have skills as a subject. And everywhere I go, everywhere I travel in the European Union, across the geography, north, south, east, west, big, small member state, I always get the same complaint, which is we do not have the people we need. So there is clearly a need in Europe for a skills revolution. We need more skilled people. And if you ask me, the two areas where clearly we need to invest more in skills is the green transition and digital. This is where the lack of skills is hurting us. So how do we go about it? This is not rocket science. There are only two ways of doing it. First is by investing in skills development, and I'm very happy now because through the Recovery and Resilience Fund, the RRF, which is, as you know, our post-pandemic development tool, for the first time, all national RRF plans have a substantial chapter for skills development to be financed by the RRF resources. So this is big. It's happening. It's happening as we speak, because this is an additional amount of money which comes on top of the structural funds that have been traditionally there for skills development. So first option is invest in skills. I'm afraid that will not be enough. So there is another option, which I think should also be considered, is that sooner or later Europe should move into some sort of a system for legal migration of skilled workers on cyber and digital. This is necessary. There is expertise out there, And Europe, sooner or later, will be asked to organize this in an orderly way. Now, this second option makes total sense for industry, for the economy, but it's not so simple in political terms. You know, there will be forces, especially in certain member states, that would spin this as Brussels is opening the door, massive migration coming in, but so we will need some sort of political backing from the capitals to do that. And to combine these two strands of skills development funding and legal migration, and bringing people, qualified people in, we will need some sort of a certification mechanism, if you like. Something that would be a plaque tournante, a rolling stone that would allow us to certify the type of skills that are being provided in a way that they can be used across the European Union. So this is the idea of the Skills Academy, the Cyber Skills Academy, which is in our work program for this year, and on which we have already discussed, and we are consulting extensively with industry. I want this to be a light instrument. I don't want this to be a bureaucratic Brussels seal on all schemes for skills development, but it will be an important tool to provide added value in an area that it's not there. And of course, I'm very happy, and I want publicly to say that many companies active in the European Union are now investing massively on skills. And this is a good thing, not only for them, but it's also for the European Union.
So it's definitely something that is very welcome from industry, as you know. So what you are basically, we will see a mechanism of certification, skills, cyber skills academies. We will see trusted vendors, an ecosystem of private public sector working on cyber. Do you foresee also maybe like hard targets, like the member states needs to, certify a certain amount of specialists, or they need to implement certain things in the schools for civil society to be able to protect their devices and know how to act? Will there be measures like security measures you see that can be not only incentivized but maybe imposed on some of these things?
I'm not a great fan of imposing obligations and targets from Brussels. I have always thought in the other policy areas that I worked in the past that the best way for Brussels to make a difference is to create systemic conditions within which member states can harvest results and can activate processes. Targets, compulsory targets coming from Brussels very often produce counter effects, resistance, or another well-known pathology, which is what I call compliance on paper. So there are reports to show that we are complying with targets, but in practice it's not happening. So rather than national targets, I would plea for this type of light regulatory touch, like the one that we have been activating, within which member states can do a lot. We have targets, but in the so-called updated European Skills Agenda, which is our horizontal instrument, and there we have targets across the policy areas for a certain number of people to be able to obtain training in the member states by 2030. But that's not only on cyber, that's overall.
So if there was one thing you could do to make Europe more cyber secure, what would that be?
Well, I think also in terms of my personal priorities and ambition, when this is over, and this will be on the 1st of December 2024, that I would be able to deliver to my successor not only a project of a security union with a single roof, as was the case when I took over, but the keys to the system. That this house with a single roof, which is being constructed, built, by the end of this political cycle, I have this ambition to have it as not as a notion, but as a reality. And it's happening. We're not far from that. Another, also linked to this analogy of the house, is that on cybersecurity, I was asked this in the Munich Security Conference. I got the same question, actually. And the Germans there, were asking me, who is in charge? Who is Mr. Cybersecurity? Is it you? Is it the Stagger? Is it Breton? Who is it? And I told them, as I'm telling here, that cybersecurity does not need a Cristiano Ronaldo type of figure. It's not for a single player. It's for a team. We need a team of cybersecurity sensitivities to be developed from different angles. Policy, DSA, DMA are also cybersecurity. NIS2, critical infrastructure, link with other areas. So the other thing that I would sort of change is this notion that on cybersecurity we play as a team Europe. And not alone, also with our member states, with Cyclone, with different structures that we have in place. And if we build a house and we have this mentality of team Europe, I think that would be enough for the current term.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give you one thing. I'm going to give you our latest report on the digital front line. And I hope that you will read it. And I hope that Europe will be, the future cyber Ronaldo. Definitely they have the support of the private sector. I want to thank you for coming here today. And we are all with you, just behind you, and ready to make a cyber Ronaldo out of Europe.
Thank you all, thank you.
Thank you so much.